The first part of this presentation is an introduction to AutoCAD 3D modeling. Looking at your screen, I'm sure you are familiar already with the workspace which you are looking at. This was basically for a 2D drawing workspace where you have your drawing tools at the top left, modify tools here, annotation tools, layer tools, block tools, properties. Now, even if you are not familiar with using this annotation and layers, no problem. The basic tools of 2D drawing remains your drawing tools and modification tools. To switch to a 3D modeling workspace, we would simply locate the workspace switcher where we can find it at the bottom right corner of this screen. We just come to this section and we see that we are switching from drafting and annotation into 3D modeling. Now, as soon as you switch to 3D modeling, you would notice that at the top left corner of your screen, you've introduced new tools, the modeling tool, mesh tool, solid editing tools. Now, these are three ways in which we can draw, or rather three ways in which we can obtain a three-dimensional geometry in AutoCAD. For us, we'll be focusing on modeling tools, which is what we are interested in. Okay, so we'll be using the modeling tool plus drawing tools and modification tools to obtain whatever 3D geometry we want to get. Very quickly, if I go to the box section and I click this arrow, I would notice that I have already on 3D some predefined geometries, which I can easily select any of them. Okay, so let's assume I select the box. And if you look at the command line of the AutoCAD, it's asking you to specify the first corner of the box. So if I specify the first corner at this corner, if you look again at the command line, it's asking me to specify the other corner. So if I want to use the dynamic input, I will just click Shift at, and let's say my next corner would be 700 in X and 100 in Y. And if I do that, I would have that. And again, if I look at my command line, is asking me to specify the height of the box. Of course, a box is a three-dimensional object, so it's going to have X, Y, and Z direction. So it's asking me for the height, which is basically the Z direction of that box. If I give the height of the box as 100 and I click enter, and I would have something like this, right? So I've generated a box in this form. Now, again, if I look at the top right corner of my screen, I would notice I have a view cube, right? This is called the view cube. And the view cube is showing me that currently I'm on my top view. Okay, I'm on the top view. Now, for me to switch between various views, I can easily do that by coming to this top left corner and changing to whatever view I want to look at. I have the bottom view, left view, right view, front, back, and various isometric views. So let's select the southwest isometric. So a southwest isometric gives us the view of our cube in this form. Rather, this is normal cube, is basically rectangular bar, right? So we've gotten a rectangular bar in this form, southwest isometric. If I wanted to see that southeast isometric, I have it in this form. Okay, that's okay. Again, if I want to switch into a more befitting 3D realistic view, I can, click the realistic view over there and it switches to a 3D geometry properly. Again, if I want to look at this object in a perspective view, I will simply come over here and switch from parallel view to perspective view. And if I click on perspective view, I see this view in a perspective view. Okay. Now, what is perspective view? Basically, perspective view shows me the object, the section of the object closer to me being larger than the section farthest from me, right? Which is okay. Also, if I want to switch to an auxiliary view, I can easily do that by coming to this view cube and clicking on this edge that shows me that is selecting two different planes, right? So let's auxiliary view of the top view and the right view, right? Basically, auxiliary view projects two planes into one view, right? Or rather, projects two views into one plane. Okay, so we have two views and just on one plane. Okay, good. So if that's clear, I can easily go back to, let's say I go back to my southwest isometric and I go back, instead of my perspective view, I go back to a parallel view. Okay, right. Now also permit me to switch off this grid on the screen. So I switch off the grid and I have something like this. Now, very quickly, let me introduce viewports to us. Now, AutoCAD has a unique advantage in that it uses, you can make use of viewports in such a way that if I come to this bottom, rather this top left corner, and I go to my viewport configuration list. For example, I can choose 2, 3, or 4 viewports. Let's assume I choose 4 viewports of equal size. What that means, I can come to this viewport, and if I'm having southwest isometric for this viewport, I can have a different view of the same object at this port. Let's assume I want to have a top view at this port. I can also come to this port and I want to have a left view at this port. I can also come to this viewport and want to have something else. Okay, let's say I have northeast. Okay, let's make a different one. Let's say northwest, right? Northwest, and let's assume we want to have this in perspective, right? So we have the perspective view of the object over here, and we have other parallel views of the objects in other viewports. Okay, and this is a unique feature of AutoCAD 3D, which is good. Okay, now very quickly we would want to switch back to just one view. We want to go back to just one viewport, and we have this as a viewport. Quickly, let me introduce the coordinate systems we use in AutoCAD to us. Basically, AutoCAD uses a generic coordinate system called the world coordinate system. Okay, if you look at the top right corner of your screen, you see WCS. It's called the world coordinate system. This world coordinate system is the default coordinate of AutoCAD, where you have X in this direction, Y in this direction, and Z in the vertical perpendicular direction. Of course, we can also switch into our own specific user coordinate system. What that means is, if I wanted a new coordinate system, instead of having my X in this direction, my Y in this direction, my Z in this direction, I can say, okay, I want my Z in a different direction. Now, if you look, it asks for the first point. That's the first point, and it asks for the point on the X-axis. So if I want here to be my X-axis, and it asks for a point on the Y-axis, if I want here, to be a point in the plane of the XY axis, I have my X in this direction, Y in this direction, and Z in this direction. Okay, if I wanted it differently, I would have my X in this direction and my Y in this direction, right? Now I have my Z has changed to this direction, right? So this is a UCS, right? User coordinate system. What that means that as you draw any geometry, you can change between coordinate systems, where we'll see the advantage of this at a later point. Also, AutoCAD also has a unique feature in that you can toggle between dynamic UCS. What that means is, if I'm drawing complicated objects and I want to draw on any plane, the UCS automatically changes. It's always dynamic. What that means is it's going to change to adapt to the plane I want to draw. Well, we're going to understand that at a later point. Very quickly, we're going to introduce us to the navigation toolbar, which some of you must have been familiar with already. If you look at this, you have your navigation toolbar. This is the pan tool, where we can use this to pan around, move around our object. This is the orbiting tool. With this, I can orbit in this form, right? And orbit and see every hidden corner of this geometry. Over here, this is a rather advanced tool where I can have this type of zooming. Okay, I can have the same orbiting. I can have the same here. I can also have a rewind. This has a rewind. It rewinds back to previous form of the object. Okay, so with that, we are done with the basic introduction, and we will go straight to 3D solid modeling properly. Now, if I delete this guy and I go back to my top view, let's assume that I'm interested in drawing a cylinder. If I click a cylinder and look at the command line is telling me to specify center points of base of the cylinder. So if I select this point, and it's asking me for the base radius, and if I select 50, if I just type in 50 for the radius, I have a radius of some sort. It's going to ask me to specify the height, right? It's always going to ask me to specify the Z direction. For Z direction, if I specify it as 100, type in 100 and click enter, automatically I have that. Now, for me to look at that properly, I want to switch to southwest isometric view. So in isometric view, you have this, and that's basically how to draw a cylinder. If I also delete this, and if I wanted to draw a cone, it basically remains the same thing. The command line asks me to specify center point. I specify the center point, and it's going to ask me